I had just finished a 14-hour shift, the kind that makes your bones hum from exhaustion. My scrubs clung to my skin from the summer heat, and I was too tired to care that I'd spilled coffee on my shirt during the night round. All I wanted was a shower and maybe 20 minutes of silence before my next shift. But as I turned the corner to my apartment door, I froze. There it was. A large, glossy suitcase sat neatly at my doorstep, metallic gold hard shell, designer tag. One of those luxury models that practically scream first class. It had a printed baggage tag still attached, LAX JFK in bold letters. My name, Rose Morgan. I looked down, heart thudding. What the hell? I hadn't been on a plane in over 3 years. I didn't own a suitcase like that, and I certainly didn't fly first class. The building was quiet, no neighbors in sight, no note, just that suitcase and my name printed on a travel tag I never authorized. Shoes I couldn't afford, and tucked into one of the compartments, a black leather wallet. Mine, I blinked. It was my backup wallet, the one I lost 2 months ago and had given up finding. Inside it were my old driver's license and a credit card I'd canceled or thought I had. My phone buzzed. I grabbed it off the counter. A notification from my bank. $4,627.45 spent at World Sky Travel. Thank you for your purchase. I dropped the phone. My knees buckled slightly. Another ping. This time a text from Kayla. Mom said you were amazing for covering the hotel too. Honestly, thank you. We'll make it up to you in Aspen. Aspen. I hadn't spoken to Kayla in 2 weeks. I hadn't agreed to anything. What hotel? I didn't respond. I couldn't. I stood there for a moment, staring at the suitcase like it might grow teeth and bite me. I opened the banking app and scrolled through recent transactions. For payments in the last 48 hours, 2 were airline purchases. 1 was a hotel chain. The last was a luxury transport service. I tapped on the passenger manifest from World Sky. My thumb hovered over the report fraud button. I tapped it. The phone buzzed again. Another message from Kayla. Can you send me the confirmation email? Derek can't find it in his inbox, and check-in is being annoying. I didn't answer. I just stared at the text, my face burning with a mix of fury and humiliation. Was this a mistake? A misunderstanding? A glitch? No, the suitcase was intentional. So were the clothes in my size. The charges were real, and someone had reactivated a canceled card. I changed all my passwords months ago. How did they still have access? And then something else hit me. 2 weeks ago, I helped Mom sign up for online grocery delivery. She'd been having trouble with her phone, asked to use mine. I handed it over, unlocked. I thought nothing of it. She'd smiled, thanked me, called me her reliable one. Reliable, as in disposable, as in available. I dialed the bank. A soft-voiced representative answered, and within minutes, I'd disputed every charge and locked my account. But that wasn't enough. The damage wasn't just numbers on a screen anymore. There was a suitcase full of proof in my living room, and I couldn't stop looking at it. A printed itinerary fell out. Departure, LAX, return. 2 weeks later, scribbled in blue pen, make sure Rose doesn't find out until after check-in. I nearly dropped it. We tried to include you. You always say you never have time. This was easier. Easier. I stared at her message, then slowly picked up the itinerary again. Something wasn't adding up. Something beyond the suitcase, beyond the money. Because this wasn't about convenience. It wasn't even just about theft. It was something deeper, calculated, and very, very personal. I stood in the center of my apartment, suitcase at my feet, phone buzzing relentlessly, and for the first time in years, I realized Di wasn't part of this family. I was their funding plan, but what I didn't understand yet was how deep it all went. Not just financially, not just emotionally. I tried to focus on my rounds, on patients, on vitals and charts, but every beep of my phone made my stomach twist. On the third night, I couldn't sleep. My laptop hummed beside me. I opened my bank account again, this time with more precision. The theft wasn't random. The charges didn't start with the suitcase. 3 months ago, a payment to Holiday Homes Intel. 2 months ago, Sky Premier Jets, and another one labeled Reimbursement Mom. I hadn't noticed them. I never got paid back for anything. I switched tabs and opened the group chat. Morgan Crew pinned message. Aspen agenda. I started scrolling. Most of the messages had come in while I was on night shifts. Photos of hotel pools, spa menus, champagne toasts, jokes about room service. And my father. She's the one with a steady job. It's only fair. Fair. I bit my lips so hard it drew blood. I wasn't included in any of the planning. There were links to flights, dinner reservations, ski rentals, but not a single tag to me. I scrolled back further, looking for where it all started. The first message came from Mom 3 months ago. Kayla, count us in. Rose will help, she always does. Mom, let me call her. There was no reply from me. No confirmation, no agreement. But weeks later, Kayla wrote, booked. Rose's card worked like a charm. Worked like a charm. I dropped the laptop on the couch and pressed my palms to my eyes. My head was pounding, but the worst part wasn't even the money. It was the casual tone. The way they talked about me like I wasn't there. Like I was a credit line, not a sister, not a daughter. And then I remembered something. 2 years ago, Kayla had borrowed my card just for the day. I thought she used it to buy groceries. She said she'd lost hers temporarily. I never canceled it because she returned it quickly. I assumed that was the end of it, but it wasn't. She must have saved the number. Or worse, linked it to her phone. My phone buzzed again. Talk soon, a surprise. I felt something cold unraveling in my chest. I wasn't even angry. Not yet. I was something else. I reopened the group chat, typed slowly. Hey, question. Who gave you permission to use my card for Aspen? 3 dots. Typing. Then Kayla. What's with the attitude? We thought you knew. Chill, Mom chimed in. We assumed it was fine, sweetheart. You've always been so generous. We didn't want to bother you at work. And then Kayla again. You know how stressed Derek's been. You could have said no. I stared at the screen, heart racing. I hadn't said yes. I hadn't even been asked. And that last message, it kept ringing in my head. You could have said no. How do you say no to a question that was never asked? I closed the chat without replying. My face felt hot, and my hands were trembling. I went back to the banking site, downloaded every suspicious transaction from the last 6 months, printed them all. $6,380.71 in total. $6,000 to fund a trip I wasn't invited to. A trip I'd unknowingly paid for while working back-to-back shifts and eating cup noodles to stretch my paycheck. I spread the papers across the floor, each receipt like a piece of a puzzle I never asked to solve. Flights, hotels, ski gear, room service, all under my name. And then another alert. Someone just tried to log into my bank account from a new device. I shut my laptop, stood slowly, walked over to the door. The suitcase was still there, untouched. Because if they could do this without flinching, what else had they done? And worse, what were they planning next? I wasn't planning to go. Mom had texted 3 times and left a voicemail. Sunday dinner, just us. Nothing dramatic. I wanted to see their faces. I needed to see if they could lie to me in person the way they did in writing. When I pulled into the driveway, Kayla's SUV was already there, parked at an angle like it owned the place. Derek's golf clubs leaned against the garage wall. My parents' front porch was lined with flower pots that hadn't been watered in weeks. Inside, everything looked perfect: plastic smiles and matching wine glasses. My mother opened the door with an apron still tied around her waist and said, "There she is, our working girl." I forced a smile. "Hi, Mom. Dad waved from the living room. Rose, you made it. Kayla looked up from her phone at the table. Wasn't sure you'd come. You've been quiet. Just busy, I said, hanging my purse on the coat rack, you know. Holding the family together. Her face twitched, but she didn't respond. Dinner was roast chicken, mashed potatoes, steamed vegetables. Mom's classic family truce meal. She only cooked like that when she wanted something or had something to cover up. We sat down. Dad poured wine for everyone but me. You're on night shifts again, right? He asked, rotating. I took water instead. There was small talk about Derek's new consulting gig, Kayla's latest interior design ideas, Mom's book club. Everyone danced around the elephant in the room, Aspen. Then, halfway through the meal, Kayla dropped her fork and laughed. Like $400 for a facial. Good thing you handled the hotel, Rose. I would have had to sell a kidney. My stomach clenched. I looked up. Excuse me? She blinked. The hotel, you booked it, right? Or did Mom? I didn't book anything, I said evenly. My name was on the charges. That's not the same. An awkward silence. Derek cleared his throat. Look, it was a group effort. We were scrambling. Things got mixed up. You used my credit card, I said, without asking, multiple times. Mom wiped her hands on a napkin. Sweetheart, we didn't think you'd mind. You always say you never take time off. We thought this was one way you could be included. Included. You went without me. Another silence. Dad set down his fork. It was last minute. Derek's bonus didn't come through. We figured we'd square it later. Later never came, I said. Just like last year when I covered your deductible, and the year before when I loaned Kayla money for her car repairs. Funny how later never shows up unless I chase it. Kayla crossed her arms. Why are you being so dramatic? You act like we robbed you. You did, I said. No one spoke. I stood up slowly, letting the chair scrape deliberately against the floor. I didn't come here for dinner. I came to give you one last chance to be honest. About what? Who gave you access to my bank app? They all exchanged looks. Dad was the first to speak. You gave it to us. When you helped your mom with groceries. Don't you remember? I did. I remembered her asking for my phone. I remembered trusting her, so that justified installing the banking app on another device. I asked, no answer. Logging in, transferring money, booking vacations. Still nothing. You didn't think I'd find out. You never thought I'd stop being convenient. Kayla scoffed. You're making this ugly, Rose. I leaned across the table. No, Kayla, you made it ugly when you smiled for selfies in a suite I paid for, while pretending I didn't exist. She stood. You're jealous. Of what? I asked. Being used. She didn't answer. I looked at my parents. You trained me to be silent, to take care of everyone, to keep the peace. But now, you don't get to decide what I carry. Mom looked like she might cry. My heart was thundering in my ears, my hands trembling, but I kept walking. As I reached for the door, my dad called after me. Rosewade, let's talk about this. Don't do anything rash. I paused. I already have. I froze my accounts. I filed fraud reports. And I started documenting everything. I opened the door. Wait, Mom said. Where are you going? I looked over my shoulder. To check on something that doesn't belong to you. And I shut the door behind me. An account I'd never seen. Someone had rerouted money from me. ... Somewhere else. But to who and why? The transaction wasn't like the others. It wasn't flashy like airline tickets or hotel stays. It didn't scream luxury. It whispered. Quiet, methodical. A monthly withdrawal of $137.45, labeled Midwestern Mutual Life Policy, L8392M. It had started 11 months ago. I hadn't noticed it because it blended in just another bill among utilities, subscriptions, student loan auto payments. But now that I knew what to look for, it stood out like a bruise in a room full of dim light. I clicked on the policy number. The insured, Rose Morgan policyholder, William Morgan beneficiary, William Morgan my father. I felt the blood drain from my face. I refreshed the page. Maybe it was a typo, but it wasn't. There it was in black and white. My life insured. My father set to collect, and the payments, every one of them, had come directly from my account. I picked up the phone and dialed the Midwestern Mutual customer line. A chipper voice answered. "Thank you for calling. May I verify the policyholder's full name and date of birth?" I gave my details, hands trembling. She confirmed the policy. I asked the question slowly. "Can you tell me who authorized the setup?" A pause. Then the policy was initiated in branch, signed by William Morgan on your behalf, with a notarized affidavit of family authorization. I stopped breathing, but she continued. "That paperwork was flagged 2 months ago for irregularity. We sent a notice." "I never received it," I whispered. "Strange," she said. "It was mailed to your listed address on Greenbrier Lane. I live on Havencrest Drive." Greenbrier was my parents' old house. Of course, I thanked her and hung up, the phone hot in my hand. A life insurance policy in my name, forged paperwork, my father listed as beneficiary, my address changed without my knowledge. I couldn't decide what was worse, that they'd done it, or that they didn't see anything wrong with it. The knock on my door startled me. It was late, too late for a neighbor. I checked the peephole. Derek, of course. I didn't open the door. "Rose," he called. "Hey, can we talk?" I didn't respond. He sighed. "Look, I get it. Things got messy, but this is getting out of hand. Kayla's freaking out. Mom's not eating. Dad's blood pressure's up. You've made your point. You're being paranoid," he added. "No one's out to get you." No, I thought. Just out to use me. I let him stand there in silence until he gave up and left. When I was sure he was gone, I sat at the kitchen table and pulled out a notebook. But I couldn't look away anymore. I opened a filing drawer and found the folder where I kept old tax forms. Inside, a crumpled envelope caught my eye, something from 6 months ago I never opened, assuming it was junk mail. It was from Midwestern Mutual. Address, change confirmation. I read the letter 3 times. I had been removed from my own policy as contact. No wonder I hadn't known. Someone had methodically erased me from my own paper trail. I needed proof. I emailed the insurance company, requesting copies of all signed documents, IP addresses of online changes, and a record of every mailing address used. I told them I believed my identity had been misused by a family member. I ended the message with, "This is not a misunderstanding. This is calculated fraud." It felt like stepping off a cliff, but I wasn't falling. I was jumping. My phone buzzed. This time it was Mom. "Your father is very upset. He was only trying to protect the family. We all are. Please don't turn this into something bigger than it needs to be." Something bigger. They'd forged signatures, altered addresses, used my money to insure my life for their profit. And she wanted to talk about proportion. No more. I stared at the message for a long time before replying. "Tell Dad I found the policy. Tell him I want it canceled by Friday, or I go to the police." No reply. I didn't expect one. The next morning, I received an email from the insurance company. Attached was a PDF copy of the affidavit submitted at the branch. I opened it. It was my name, all right, but not my handwriting, not even close. And under relationship to beneficiary, someone had written, "Daughter and married, no dependents." I didn't cry. I printed the document, highlighted every line they had manipulated, and filed it in a folder I'd labeled the night before, Evidence Family. And then I made a new list, one I'd never thought I'd write. People to remove as emergency contacts. At the top of the list, Mom, Dad, Kayla. But what I hadn't realized yet was that Kayla's betrayal hadn't even peaked. because the next charge on my bank statement wasn't for a policy or a plane ticket. It was for a daycare, one I'd never set foot in. It showed up like all the others, quiet, clinical, coded in banking language. Sunrise Academy. I didn't have kids. I didn't know anyone who worked there. I didn't know anyone who went there. At least, that's what I thought until I Googled it. Private Early Education Center. Infants through pre-K, dual language immersion, located in Northbridge, the same town where Kayla and Derek had moved last spring. The same week they'd told me they couldn't afford a nanny anymore. I clicked on the tuition page. $882 per month. Exactly the amount withdrawn from my account for the last 4 months. My head spun. That was over $3,000, disguised as routine noise in my bank feed, lost in a sea of legitimate bills. I scrolled through my texts, searching for anything, any mention of daycare, and then I found it. It makes the paperwork easier. Promise it's nothing big. I'll bring cupcakes next time. I never answered. And apparently, silence meant yes. The receptionist was bright and cheerful. I told her I was calling to confirm billing, as I'd been listed as the payment contact. Sure thing, she said. Can I get your name? I gave it. Can you confirm who enrolled them? I asked, voice thin. Of course. Looks like Kayla Brooks filled out the paperwork. She noted that Euros Morgan would be handling payments since you're more reliable. More reliable. There it was again. That word, like I was a utility. Like I was a service. I thanked her and hung up before my voice cracked. Not even because of the betrayal. They'd built their lives around the idea that I was a constant. A bottomless well. Someone who could be counted on not as a sister, not as a daughter, but as a resource. And I'd let them. That night, I drafted an email to Sunrise Academy requesting removal of my billing credentials. Then I logged into my bank and disconnected every auto debit I could find. I opened my freezer, pulled out a bag of frozen peas, and held it against my face, trying to numb the pressure behind my eyes. A new message came in. Kayla, hey Ken, you move your payday forward a few days. We're short on cash, again. I didn't reply. She messaged again 10 minutes later. Hello, you okay? And again, you're being kind of dramatic lately. I know you're stressed, but don't take it out on the rest of us. I turned off my phone, but something wouldn't let me sleep. I pulled out my laptop, reopened my folder titled Evidence Family. Enrollment authorized under false financial guardian status, confirmed by school admin, no consent provided. I stared at the list. 7 items now, 7 quiet ways they'd siphoned from me. Each one was surgical, precise, cold, and I wasn't done. Because I hadn't even begun to ask where Derek's name had appeared in all this. So I did. Kingdom Elite Network, the charges were small, $49.99 here, $199 there, but then came one I'd missed, $2,200 labeled Ken Affiliate Access, Tier Black. I clicked the link tied to the vendor. A crypto investment coaching site. I knew exactly what that meant. Derek was gambling again. Last time it was sports betting. This time it was digital currency wrapped in fake empowerment, and they were using me to cover his tracks. A sinking feeling took hold in my chest. What if they hadn't just used me? What if they'd built their entire financial survival around my income? Every favor, every dinner, every I love you with strings tied to it. I opened the group chat, the one I hadn't looked at in days. Kayla had messaged again. I hope you're not making a big deal out of this daycare thing. We can fix it. Just talk to us, Mom followed. Your silence is hurting everyone. Family doesn't do this to each other. And finally, Dad, you're being cold. We needed help. That's not a crime. No, but forgery is. And theft. And the next receipt in the stack had my name and social security number printed on it trite, beneath the words, Midwest Health Insurance Primary Policyholder, Rose Morgan, dependent added, Derek Brooks, I had never added him, but someone had. And someone had forged my signature again. I stared at the health insurance form like it might vanish if I blinked enough times. Primary policyholder, Rose Morgan dependent, Derek Brooks relationship, domestic partner authorization signature, Rose M. It wasn't my signature, and he wasn't my partner. They'd crossed every line I thought was sacred. My credit, my wallet, my silence, and now, my identity. I printed the document and added it to the folder, now almost an inch thick. The paper was hot from the printer, but my hands were cold. Intentional, repeated, and coordinated. I opened Excel, made a new sheet, labeled the first column, date, the second, transaction, the third, amount, and the fourth, proof attached. I started logging Aspen flights, 4,627.45 YES, Hotel Vale Resort, $3,382 yes, private transport, 619 yes, Sunrise Academy, 3,528 yes, life insurance policy, 1,512.05 yes, crypto affiliate scheme, $2,200. It wasn't just about the money, it was about the erosion of trust, of dignity, of ownership over my own life. My inbox pinged. A new email, subject, urgent reimbursement agreement from Kayla Brooks. I hesitated, then opened it. Rose, I think we've all said things we didn't mean. This has gotten out of hand. We love you. Attached is a breakdown of what we can repay. Please don't escalate this. It would devastate Mom. Attached was a spreadsheet. A mockery of one, really. Ballet classes, $400 some daycare, $500 hotel refund, TBD total offered. $900, I laughed out loud, a sound that felt sharp in my own throat. $900. They thought 900 would patch a wound they'd spent years slicing open. I didn't reply. Instead, I updated my own spreadsheet's title, Reimbursement Demand, due in 30 business days. Then I drafted an email to family group chat. Subject reimbursement, request unauthorized charges, and breach of trust body. Please find attached a comprehensive summary of unauthorized financial actions conducted under my name or through my accounts in the last 18 months. These include, but are not limited to, credit card abuse, unauthorized dependents added to health plans, enrollment of minors using false financial credentials, and forgery of signatures on insurance documents. Full repayment of $16,958.50 is expected within 30 business days, after which I will be submitting this file to both my credit provider and local fraud division. As of today, July 3rd, I will no longer be financially supporting, contributing to, or subsidizing any member of this family. No exceptions. Rose, I hit send. 2 minutes later, Kayla called. I didn't answer. Then Mom, then Dad, then Kayla again. My phone vibrated like a siren until I threw it across the bed. I didn't want to hear their voices anymore, but the silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was like standing at the edge of a forest, waiting for the rustle that tells you something is coming. That night, they showed up at my apartment. Mom knocked first. Rosie, please. I didn't move. Then Dad. You can't just shut us out over money. Money. This was never about money. They stood outside for 13 minutes. I timed it. When they left, I opened the door and found a note folded under my welcome mat, written in my mother's handwriting. We didn't mean to hurt you. We were just trying to survive. That's what all users say when the well runs dry. I went back inside and added one more tab to the spreadsheet. Final action plan, cancel all cards, contact fraud division, report identity misuse to HR, remove all emergency contacts, change phone number, freeze, credit report, new bank account, lock file cabinet, backup everything. I took a breath and saved the file under a new name, closure nan-negotiable.xlsx, the next morning. I took a flash drive with the evidence folder, printed a hard copy, and sealed it in an envelope. Just in case they were stupid enough to escalate, what I didn't expect was for Derek to be the first to snap. 3 days later, I got a call from my bank. Someone tried to open a line of credit in my name again. Same address, Greenbrier Lane, but this time they used my social security number. And when I asked for the name on the application, the banker replied, Derek Brooks, frozen credit, backup drives. But when the bank confirmed that Derek had used my social security number to try and open a line of credit, I felt something in me fracture. It wasn't just identity theft. It was a declaration of war. I asked the bank to send the application. They did. And when I opened the PDF, my stomach turned. My full name, my old address, my income inflated to double my actual salary, and a forged signature at the bottom. The same messy loop of an R Derek always made when he signed something in a rush. They weren't just siphoning from me anymore. They were becoming me. I sent the file to myself and saved it with a new title, Derek Attempted Credit Fraud.pdf. Then I closed my laptop and walked into the living room, where the suitcase still sat like a monument to my former self. Each thing they bought with my money felt radioactive now. A designer blouse, a perfume bottle, a silk scarf. I packed everything into a trash bag. All of it went straight to the dumpster. I was done carrying things they bought with my silence. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay on the couch, eyes wide in the dark, heart racing with thoughts I couldn't turn off. What if Derek tried something else? What if Kayla still had access to my insurance portal? What if my parents were planning to cover for him again? And then, around 6 a.m., the buzzing began. My phone vibrating against the floor like an alarm. First from Kayla, then from Mom, then Dad, and then, to my horror, from the hospital. I answered instantly. It wasn't an emergency code. It was HR. Hi, Rose. Sorry to bother you this early, but something came through our system that flagged your profile. What kind of something? I asked, already bracing. There was an application submitted to adjust your health benefits at an appendant, but the system caught inconsistencies in the authorization signature. Did you initiate that? I closed my eyes. No, I didn't, she sighed. I thought so. The dependent's name is Derek Brooks. Any idea how he got your employment credentials? I didn't respond right away because I already knew Kayla it had to be. She knew my login. A mistake I was paying for now. I'll take care of it, I said. I'm sorry this is happening, she replied gently. Let us know if you need legal assistance. We're required to report this if it escalates. It already had. By noon, I drafted a cease and desist letter and emailed it to every address I had for Kayla and Derek, copying my parents too. Subject line, cease unauthorized use of personal and financial information. Final warning, no one replied. Until 5:42 p.m., a knock at my door. I didn't have to check the peephole. I could feel it. I watched from the side window as my parents stood outside. Mom clutched a folder. Dad wore that tight-lipped look he always put on when he wanted to appear calm, but was boiling inside. I didn't move. They knocked again, then Dad called through the door. Rose, we need to talk. This is going too far. I didn't respond. You can't punish the whole family over this, Mom added, voice trembling. But I could, and I would. You're hurting everyone, she continued. Kayla's a wreck. Derek hasn't left the house. Your father hasn't slept. I leaned against the wall, eyes closed, breathing in silence. They knocked again, then again, harder. This isn't you, Dad snapped. This bitterness, this cruelty, that word cruelty, as if I were the one who forged signatures, as if I were the one who drained thousands, as if I were the one who added a known felon as a dependent on someone else's healthcare. Then came the envelope under the door. It slid across the tile slowly, like a peace offering, except peace wasn't on their agenda. I picked it up, It was a check. $17,000.00, no note. No apology, just silence with a $sign. I pinned the check to my corkboard above the desk, next to the spreadsheet. Not as a victory, as a receipt. At 10:13 p.m., I received a new voicemail. Mom, your father is devastated. Kayla isn't eating Derek. He's struggling. We all make mistakes, Rosie. But turning your back on blood, that's not who you are. I played it twice, then deleted it, because that was who I was now. Someone who said no. Someone who enforced limits. Someone who finally stopped bleeding just to keep other people warm. The next morning, I did something I'd been putting off. I opened my HR portal. Under emergency contacts, I removed all 3 names: Mom, Dad, Kayla, and in the blank space, I typed a new one, David Chen, a nurse I'd met in the break room 3 weeks ago. Someone who brought me coffee without asking for anything in return. Someone who didn't know my past and didn't benefit from it. I clicked save. And just as I closed the tab, my phone buzzed one last time. An unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. When I played it back, the voice sent a jolt down my spine. Hi Rose, it's Marissa. I know we haven't talked in years, but I think you need to see something about Derek and your parents. I'm sending a file. I didn't sleep that night. I watched the inbox like it was a lifeline. At 1:08 a.m., it arrived. Subject: You deserve to know the truth. From Marissa Chen. Attachment: Derek_abuse_records.pdf. I hesitated. Marissa, Derek's ex-wife. The one who vanished after their divorce 5 years ago. Smart, calculated, a lawyer with no tolerance for nonsense. We were never close, but I remembered admiring her ability to see through charm. I clicked the file. The PDF opened to a table of contents. Bank transfers, emails between Derek and Sandra Morgan, gambling, ledger scripto schemes, falsified loan applications, affidavits. I scrolled through screenshots of Derek rerouting money from a joint family account, thousands transferred to offshore gambling sites. Then came the emails. From Mom, we'll fix this. Just make sure Rose doesn't find out. They knew. My parents knew everything about the daycare, about the policy, about the health insurance forgery. They hadn't just enabled Derek, they had protected him for months, maybe years. They watched him bleed me dry and chose silence over truth. I called Marissa. She answered on the second ring. I wasn't sure you'd call, she said gently. Why now? I asked, barely holding my voice steady. Because I saw what they did to you, she replied, and it looked a lot like what they did to me. I couldn't watch it happen again. You kept records? I asked. Of everything, she said. I knew someday someone else would need them. Turns out it was you. I whispered, thank you. You're not alone, she said. Not anymore. The next morning I printed every file, stapled it, filed it beside my evidence folder. The PDF from Marissa emailed it to my parents, Kayla, Derek, and for good measure, my dad's HR department with no return name. That afternoon, I received a call. Blocked number. I let it go to voicemail. Dad's voice low and flat. You'll regret this. No, I wouldn't, because for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one apologizing. Rumor had it, HR opened an internal ethics review. Kayla tried calling 5 times. I never answered. Instead, I focused on the pieces I could rebuild. I started therapy. Real therapy, not journaling in secret or swallowing guilt. I cooked again. I slept with the window open. I took long walks without checking my bank account first. And slowly, a new version of me emerged. We sat on my floor, reviewing hiking trails on his laptop. He pointed at one. Want to go next weekend? I didn't check my calendar. I didn't check my budget. I just said, yes. Weeks passed. Then one day, I received a handwritten letter with no return address. I recognized the handwriting. Kayla, 5 pages, all carefully worded, polite, controlled. It wasn't an apology, it was a performance. We all make mistakes. You took it too far. Mom cries every day. You've turned your back on blood. We miss you. Family is family. That doesn't change, but it had changed. Because I wasn't the same Rose anymore. At the bottom of the letter, she wrote, "We hope one day you'll come back." I folded the letter, slid it into a drawer, and placed it on top of the file from Marissa. Then I wrote one sentence on the back of the envelope. I did come back just to say I'm not coming back. That night, a card arrived in the mail. No return name, just 3 words inside. "And I see you." It was from Marissa, and I smiled. Because someone finally did. 6 months passed. I didn't slam the door on my family. I locked it. And the key, I kept it in my pocket. Only now, I had no intention of ever using it again. I donated the $17,000 check they gave me to a scholarship fund for nursing students, supporting their families financially. Because somewhere out there is a woman just like I was 5 years ago, rationing her meds, skipping meals, loaning money to people who say, "You're so reliable," like it's a compliment. I wanted her to know, it's not normal, it's not love, and she's not alone. My name is Rose Morgan. I used to be the emergency contact for people who left me in emotional debt. Now, I'm the contact for myself. And for the first time in my life, I am not rescuing anyone. I am rescuing me.